What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart for those of you that are new. Happy Saturday to all of you. Today, I'll be breaking down this four-game NBA slate here for Saturday night on DraftKings. I'll be talking through my favorite plays, some core plays, and building a potential lineup for you guys for tonight's game. Always stay updated with injury news, and make sure to check out my Patreon link down below if you guys want a more in-depth breakdown and my updated core plays. And last night was amazing, guys. If you guys didn't just see my tweets, we can take a quick look at my recap of my lineup from last night. So, four more core plays which were posted on my Patreon, which you can find linked down below. I went with Maxi, Bane, SGA, and Keegan Murray as my core plays. And as you can see, Maxi went for 63.5 fantasy points there, only 20% ownership there. Bane, 17% ownership. He went for 62. So, 260 bombs from Maxi and Bane. As I said, Maxi has been a free play every single slate, locked him in every single slate, and yet DraftKings doesn't play him or doesn't change his price, and the fish don't play him. I don't get it. The dude's been a free square every single game so far. Absolutely killed it. Bane absolutely smashed. SGA 7.9% ownership. He went for almost a 60 bomb as well there against the Kings. As I said, love the matchup there for him going against Davian Mitchell, Ellis, and whatever guard they try to put on him. Absolute Swiss cheese defense for him to destroy. And then Keegan Murray, all I said is he just needs to hit his shots. Finally hit his shots, and he also got 11 rebounds. So he went for a nice double-double there. Almost a 50 bomb with 48.75 fantasy points at 3.2% ownership. So all pretty low owned guys there, all super low owned compared to what they should have been. Maxi should have been probably 50% owned. I mean, absolute smash spot, cheap price tag. I mean, the usage is insane, and he went for a 60 bomb. So fantastic night there from the core plays. Ended up going for it's a $5 single entry. It's nothing too crazy like winning wise, but what is that? About a 7x return on my money there last night. Went with Derek Jones Jr. I tweeted out how once Maxi Kleber got ruled out, they really don't have much depth there when it comes to the small forwards, power forwards, and even centers there for Dallas. So I knew Derek Jones Jr. was going to get some decent run. He's been in decent run all season, starting a little bit as well. So obviously double double really helps. He had like 24 fantasy points in the first quarter there, which is insane. But yeah, he smashed. Santi was super disappointing. Saw the lowest minutes of the season, 13 minutes when he was seen. I saw, I think, 20 the first game and then 27 the last game. And then, yeah, last night only saw 13. That was very frustrating there. Luke Cornett was really solid as a punt play center. And then Luke Kennard was pretty decent there, pretty high owned. Yeah, very, very good night last night. Looking to continue that into tonight. Starting off here, we'll take a quick peek at the game total and spread. So for the Bucks Magic, 4-point spread, 232 game total. Raptors Celtics, 8-point spread, 223 and a half, or excuse me, 223 game total. Well, at risk there. Same thing with the Heat Hawks right now. 7-point spread, 226 and a half game total. There is no Jimmy Butler. That was the big news that just dropped about like 10, 15 minutes ago. And then Cavs Warriors, 4-point spread, 225 game total. So guys, jumping into the first game here. So for the first game here, the big news is obviously Damian Lillard. He was out last game, and then they started Giannis, Middleton, Lopez, Campaign, and Malik Beasley. So if you get Dame's out again, that's who they're going to start. And then Campaign and Giannis would pretty much be lock and load plays for me, pretty much core plays if there is no Dame. And then I would have a good amount of interest in Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis, at least one of them. And then I do think Beasley, Crowder, and Connaughton all would become very, very strong secondary options. Um, Now, if there is Dame, excuse me, if there is Dame, it does change a good amount here. Campaign obviously wouldn't be a play for me. Giannis would still be a great play, and I do think Dame would be a very, very strong contrarian play there at 9.3K. And then I do think you could still get to a guy like Bobby or Brook Lopez there at 5.3 and 5.6K. They both have a pretty decent ceiling. I do think I'd rather get to Brook Lopez just because the minutes are a little bit safer. And has a little bit more upside with the threes and the blocks, but still, I think they'd both be solid plays there. But yeah, it really just revolves around Dame. If there's Dame, it's pretty much just to be Giannis, Dame for me, maybe some Brook or Bobby Portis, and then I guess you could sprinkle in a little bit of either Crowder, or if you want to get a little bit crazier, go to Connaughton, but nothing too crazy there. Obviously, if no Dame, Giannis becomes a lock and load. Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis look even better. They should both be super aggressive offensively. Campaign becomes a lock. And then Beasley, Crowder, and Connaughton all become very strong secondary options. Chris Middleton, it's just the minutes limit, right? Like for me, a guy who's going to be seeing 20 minutes, 21. I mean, he still isn't seeing 25 minutes yet. Sure, as you can see, he went for a 30 bomb there in 21. You just really need him to be super, super productive to really pay off his salary. And I don't think there's a need to get to mid 6.1K. On the Orlando side here, with Fultz back, it does eat into kind of the point forward usage for Paulo and Franz a little bit there. So I think they're fine, mid range options. I don't mind them. Wendell is still out, so we'll still get Goga starting at center. But as you can see with the minutes, they're not closing with him. So he's only seeing about 21 to 22 ish minutes. He's been productive when he's out there. But yeah, just not closing with him, not giving him a ton of minutes. So that makes him just more so of an okay play. Mo will get the backup minutes there at center. I'd rather get to him. He just seems a little bit more boom or bust, but he just seems better offensively. So I do think if you're going to want to play one of the Orlando centers, I'd probably go with Mo Wagner. Excuse me, Franz. Mo, excuse me. And then in terms of the guards, I actually do have a good amount of interest in the guards. It kind of comes down to ownership for me, but still, I really like Cole Anthony. I think Suggs is probably the safest of the bunch. Probably doesn't have the highest of the ceiling compared to the other two, but probably the safest. Cole Anthony's more the most boomer bust. And then Fultz is kind of just like the low floor, low ceiling right now. He does have a really high ceiling, hasn't flashed it yet this season, but we know it's there. As you can see, going against the Lakers, he put up 36.5. So he does have a really good season. More so, just more a very, very risky GPP play, but I do have a good amount of interest in all three of these guards here. Do like them a lot. Do think they're all pretty cheap here. Not the best matchup against Milwaukee, trying to guard against, drive the lane against, Giannis and Brook Lopez, who are great at getting blocks, but still, overall, the Bucks defense has been pretty Swiss cheese. So do like those guards a lot. And then off the bench, no real interest in any of these guys besides maybe Jonathan Isaac, who I mentioned last slate. He was a fantastic value play for me. Dart throw value, 25 fantasy points there. And he could get, extended run this game with Mo and with Goga. They are both pretty foul prone bigs, not the best defenders. So if they get in foul trouble, the Magic really don't have much size off the bench. They're going to need to lean into Jonathan Isaac. And Isaac, if like this dude didn't get hurt, he'd probably be one of the best forwards in the league. Probably one of the best defenders, if not the best. And he's also really good offensively. He's just gotten absolutely screwed by injuries the past like 4 or 5 years, which has really held him back. But yeah, he's super productive at times when he comes off the bench there. So do really like him there as a nice value piece, dart throw value piece at 33.9K. He's power forward and center eligible, so that's really nice. They'll mix in some Joe Ingles, about 15-ish minutes, maybe a little bit more, but nothing crazy there. Gary Harris is out, so obviously it just kind of raises the minutes floor of guys like Suggs, Fultz, and Cole Anthony there, makes him a little bit more appealing. And that's really it for me. Anthony Black, we'll see about 15-ish minutes. He's just not really productive or aggressive when he's out there, so I don't really think there's a need to get to him. Moving on to Toronto here versus Boston. A little bit of blowout risk, as I mentioned, but Scotty Barnes has been fantastic this season so far. He's pretty much been the Tyrese Maxey play for me. Pretty much a lock and load every single slate. I mean, he's averaging 21.5, 10.4 rebounds, 6 assists per game, and almost 2 steals per game. About 52 fantasy points per game. So even though it's a tough matchup, absolutely love Scotty Barnes as a spin-up play. I think Pascal's a really interesting GPP option. I don't know if much people will get to him just because they'd rather get to Scotty or get to other pieces in this slates. But still, I mean, he's going to see the minutes. It really just comes down to, can he be efficient? There's games where he's not, been pretty bad, especially with Scotty taking over. But still, I think it's a very interesting price tag for Pascal there in this matchup. Do really like Dennis Schroeder. 6.4K does seem kind of priced about right, but still, he does have that double upside there with the points and the assists. So I do like him. He's one of those guys who should see about mid 30s minutes and has a ceiling of around 50 or more. Podol, just not seeing, it's one of those things where he just doesn't see about 30 minutes. So even though he can be super productive in that amount of time, Boston could go small here, which could end up, really hurting Podol. So he's more so of just a secondary GPP option for me. Same thing with OG. Does have a solid ceiling. They're going to need his defense against Brown and Tatum. So I actually have a good amount of interest in him. He's probably my second favorite play on this team so far, behind Scotty and slightly ahead of Dennis Schroeder. But all three do have a good amount of interest in. Gary Trent Jr., more of a secondary option. Super score independent. But if he hits his shots, he could definitely go for 25, 30 plus. So I don't mind him if you land on him. And then Precious, if he's good to go, he will eat into some of the minutes of Podol there. Now, if he's good to go and not on a minutes limit, I actually do like him a lot. It's 4.6, but if he's on a minutes limit, no real interest in him for me, and it'd probably take the interest in total away from me. And then obviously, if there is no Precious, Boucher would be a decent, cheap option here. Who's pretty productive, super foul prone. But if this game does blow out, he will get extended run, and he'd be a very very good play there. So yeah, good amount of interest in Boucher, depending on that Precious news. Moving on to the Boston side here. So for Boston, I think Tatum's still coming in at a pretty cheap price tag for the guy who's really driving the offense in this team. Did not shoot the ball well at all there against Brooklyn. Don't know if he scored a point in the first quarter or the third quarter. It really all came in the second and fourth, I believe. But still, went for 42.5 fantasy points. Really hasn't flashed like a major ceiling besides that first game. Otherwise, he's kind of been floating around 50 fantasy points, but still, I mean, he's going to be leading this team. He's playing a ton of minutes. So Tatum looks like a great, solid spin up play. Brown and Porzingis more so, secondary options for me. They both have upside, but they're kind of, boomer bust a little bit. So I don't think I'm going to get to them unless they're super low ownership. I'd rather get to Drew Holiday there or Derek White, who is really solid that last, or not really solid, but 26 and a half, not worse, not the best. Only saw 27 minutes, which is a little bit interesting there. Not really sure why, but still, I do like Derek White a good amount here at 5.8K. Super productive. He's been super aggressive as well alongside those stars, which we do like to see. Al Horford sat out last night, but he should be good to go in this game. Should see, mid to low 20s minutes. Maybe gets extended a little bit into the 30-minute range, but really hasn't been productive at all. So I think he's more so just kind of a weak secondary option there at 5.2K. And with him back, no real interest in any of the bench guys like Luke Cornett, Hauser, Pritchard. They're all kind of there for me. I don't really think there's a need to get to them. For Miami, big news here. Tyler Hero has obviously been out, but then Jimmy Butler just got ruled out this morning. So very gross team here. A lot of your options, a lot of your value options should come from this team. So I think Bam looks like a great play here. Obviously, there is some blowout risk, but this offense should flow through Bam, who's had two great games back to back. Comes at a really solid price tag, 8.5K. Kyle Lowry should see probably 30 plus minutes, and he should be pretty aggressive offensively. So I really like him as well. I expect Josh Richardson to start. He should see 30 plus minutes. He should be super aggressive offensively as well. So I'm going to start just throwing in these guys in here right now, just because there's a ton of usage and minutes to go around to these guys. So I'm going to just start throwing them into the lineup as an early look plays because they're all great plays as of right now. But obviously, we do have to wait for the news. Maybe they rule out Bam as well. Who knows? But and I probably would expect Kyle Lowry, Richardson, probably Duncan, Bam, and I assume Highsmith has been starting the past few games for Kevin Love, so they'd probably throw him in there as well. So 4.2, he should be more aggressive. So I do have a good amount of interest in those guys. And then off the bench, we should probably see Kevin Love. Not really sure what's going on here. Haven't been playing him at all, so really don't know what's going on with that. Definitely keep your eyes peeled. Definitely super risky because they just have not been playing him. But he could potentially get some minutes there. And then, they're super short-handed, so they're going to have to play guys like Hawk has a good amount off the bench. Bryant's already been seeing about 12-ish minutes. He probably sees closer to 20 maybe. He'd be a solid value. Jovic is questionable. If he's good to go, I would assume he sees around 20-ish. He'd be a decent play. And then Orlando Robinson, I do have a good amount of interest in him. As you can see, he's super productive. Very foul prone, but super productive when he's out there. And so if, this game blows out or, if it's close, I still could see him playing a good amount of minutes. So a lot of interest in him. And then a lot of interest in Drew Smith, a guy who's already seen some minutes in a few games here and there. He's a good shooter, more of a defensive player, but still, I do have a good amount of interest in him as well. So a lot to like here for Miami. Kind of have to wait and see approach with kind of the news if Bam plays and kind of the lineup news, who they start and who they don't start, and kind of go based off of that. So I will have a more in-depth breakdown on my Patreon for tonight. Hopefully, get that news soon. For the Atlanta side, I talked about how I absolutely love Trae Young there, the other is Slate, and unfortunately, I switched off him at the last second to DeJounte Murray, and it cost me a top 5. So that was frustrating, but yeah, Trae Young, massive ceiling. I think he's a solid play, decent spend up there. DeJounte, more so of a contrarian play, kind of like it's like a Dame in Giannis situation where it's like you'd rather get to Trae Young, but DeJounte Murray does have a really good ceiling. So that's kind of similar situations for me. You'd rather get to Trae, but DeJounte has a great ceiling, more so the contrarian play there. So do have a good amount of interest in them. I mean, it's a great matchup here. Just hope this game stays close. Jalen Johnson's been absolutely amazing so far this season. So super productive. Really like him here at 6.2K. Clint Capella, another one of those centers who's pretty productive, but not seeing 30 minutes. So not a ton of interest in him for me. He could be a decent GPP option, but you'd rather, want him to get 30 plus minutes, and he probably won't. Hunter can have those random games where he goes off. Not a lot of interest in him for me. I'd rather get two Bogdan here, who should be pretty aggressive, as well as Bay, who's moved to the bench, but he's been aggressive off the bench there and decently productive. So I do have a good amount of interest in these wings, Bogdan and Bay. Okongu's pretty solid option there at center off the bench. Probably could get extended if this game does blow out. So good amount of interest in him. He's been super efficient recently. And that's really it. It's not a lot of interest in anyone else. It's pretty much just kind of the cheaper guys for me, and then Jalen Johnson, and then maybe get into one of the guards. But I do think you're going to want to get to at least one or two of these Atlanta guys just because of the matchup now with no Jimmy, no Tyler Hero. Should make it a lot easier to score and make it a little bit more of a gross game, which could benefit, DFS wise. And last game here, Cleveland and Golden State. Donovan Mitchell, I think it's a really solid spin up option. I don't know if he'll get much ownership there, so that does make him pretty interesting. Evan Mobley is a little bit too pricey for me with a full healthy team. Does have upside, but really, I'd rather get to a guy like Darius Garland, who looks like he's off his minutes limit. Really good player here. Love the upside here. He can easily go for a double with the points and assists. So absolutely love this price tag at 6.9K for him. And then I do really like the price tag of Jarrett Allen, 5.7K. Minutes haven't been the best since he's come back from injury, but if you can see, close to 30 minutes, super productive. They don't mind throwing him out there, even though Golden State likes to run small. He still will get those minutes. So I actually have a good amount of interest in Jared down there at 5.7K. So I will throw him in here for right now, and then we'll get Highsmith back into this lineup. And then for the rest of the team here, they're really running the starters a ton of minutes. So it's like, Donovan Mitchell, Garland both going to see probably 36 to 38 minutes. Mobley should see around 35. Karis LeVert saw huge minutes off the bench, 34. So he's playing a ton of minutes. So he's a decent option. Don't love the price tag, but he's solid. Struz, same thing, should see close to 35. I think him and Karis are decent secondary options just because they're seeing a ton of minutes. And the only one that with the question mark in minutes is Jared Allen, but I do think he sees a little bit more minutes tonight. And then off the bench, they'll play some Niang, some Wade, and Thompson, but no real interest in any of those guys. And then for Golden State, I love Steph as a spin up play. He's really been the only person who's been appealing on the Warriors right now in terms of DFS. Klay Thompson, we know he has upside there. It just comes down to, can he hit his shots? If he can easily go for obviously 50 plus there, real life points as well. But that's the risk there with Klay. He's just priced a little bit too high for me, just in terms of his production and what he's been doing recently. Same thing with Chris Paul, with Draymond Green back running the offense. Chris Paul's ceiling has really been limited. Draymond Green is probably the second most interesting play for me on this game on Slate, alongside Steph. The mints haven't been the best coming back from that injury there, but still 6K for a guy who can go for 40 plus. I really like him. I really like Steph. The rest of the team more so secondary options like a Wiggins, Paul, Thompson. Don't really think there's a need to get to any of them. Sarge, I think it's a fine play there. He's been pretty efficient. I'd rather get to Okongwu, but Sarge does have that power forward eligibility as well. Kaminga, see about 15 to 20 minutes there off the bench. Nothing crazy. Gary Payton, probably my third favorite play just because he is getting a decent amount of minutes. Not the best in terms of production wise, but still seeing a good amount of minutes. And then that's really it. They'll throw in some Moody as well, about 15-ish minutes. Probably my favorite value play would be Moody, and they will give, Trace Jackson Davis some random minutes, but nothing too crazy there. That will do it for the breakdown, guys. In terms of finishing out this lineup, as I said, it really depends on kind of who they start here for Miami, but there's a lot to like here for the Miami side. But 7,100 left over, 2 forward positions to fill out here. Let's see what we can cook up. Probably going to throw in Scotty there. Really like him there. And 5.3K left over. Could get to Bobby Portis. Do like that. But it's really dependent on that Dame news for me. Otherwise, not a ton of interest in these wings. Don't mind getting too bogged down there. I do think you're going to want to get at least, one or two of these wings here for the Hawks. Yeah, so I think this is a solid first lineup here. Obviously, we do have to wait for a good amount of news, the Dame news, the news with who's going to start there from Miami, as well as Al Horford kind of had to confirm he's going to be good to go tonight, and that Precious news. So some decent news we do have to wait on for tonight. So make sure you hit that like button. Stay updated with me on my Patreon link down below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.